The tide seems to be turning against the Roadsters this year, as yet more rear-engine cars are entered into the field. Lightweight and agile, it seems the future of the event may be with these new designs.
So here we are on the pole for the Indianapolis 500. You can see the two Lotuses outside the front row. And in my Halibrand, we are underway and racing. Roadsters in the second row, Bobby Unser and AJ Foyt. But we lead through turn one from Jim Clark and Bobby Marshman. Into turn two, taking it a little bit easy. This car easily qualified onto the pole. 5 miles per hour faster than the competition, but we're safely down the back straightaway, it appears, out of turn two, the whole field safely into the race. So we'll see if this one settles in. In 1963, there was a major crash in the game, I should say, on the second lap of the race, which took out a lot of competitors early on. Unfortunately, I lost a chance at a good position because I ran out of fuel. But today, as I pull away 1.5 seconds from Jimmy Clark, the dominant victor at Trenton, you gotta think that if I need to make a pit stop in this Halibrand Offenhauser, that we'll be able to make it, hopefully with enough of a gap that I won't lose any positions, but you just never know. So 2 seconds already ahead of Jimmy Clark in that Lotus, the green and yellow Lotus, such a famous, famous car. And as you saw in the intro, Bob Jenkins mentioned that this race is really when the tide turns, I should say, easy for me to say, in the rear engine versus front engine debate at Indianapolis. You saw 5 or 6 different chassis in that intro. Ironically enough, I don't think you saw my Halibrand. That's another one of the brand new rear engine cars. I guess you could call them American-built Lotus clones, but as a clone, this one's pretty good because it's actually 10 miles an hour faster than the Lotus I was trying to qualify for the race. Maybe I should have tried to put the Lotus in the show just for a bit of excitement and then gone with the Halibrand later on. But anyway, this was a good choice because this car is solid. It handles well, and as you can see, it's able to gap away from the Lotuses, at least early on in the race. Of course, it's going to be a long one. 50 laps in these cars is very difficult. Of course, it would go without, or it shouldn't go without mentioning the tragedy that happened in real life in 1964. I mentioned it in my qualifying episode, but if you missed that, on the second lap of the race, which are already passed, there was a major accident which ended up being fatal for 2 drivers right out of here. Turn 4, which Dave McDonald spun into the inside wall, came back across the track, and was T-boned by Eddie Sachs. Many, many other drivers were collected in it. It was a huge fireball, terrible looking crash, and again, both of those drivers were killed. It led to the not outright banning of gasoline, that's a bit of a misnomer at Indianapolis, but major restrictions on the amount of fuel that could be put on board the cars. The car I'm actually driving, the Halibrand, is the type of chassis that Eddie Sachs was killed in. As I touch the wall there, that's not a good sign. But anyway, yeah, Sachs was killed in this car. It wasn't a failure of the chassis. He T-boned a burning car. So really, and then the gasoline erupted around him. So really, it wasn't necessarily a fault of the chassis, aside from the fact that it carried about 90 gallons of fuel, which exploded on impact. So it's kind of interesting that this car is so good in this game, and I'm kind of lucky that I chose it. Sachs is actually running 16th. He started 22nd, so he's carving his way through the field. Wonder if we'll get a Halibrand 1-2. That would be kind of difficult, but not impossible, as we're already working the 10% distance of this race. Ronnie Duman, who was the slowest qualifier, is living up to that right now in 33rd spot overall in the race. Don't know who the fastest front engine car is. Looks like Parnelli Jones from that leaderboard is working his way up through the field. So AJ Foyt is the leader of the front engine contingent from Parnelli Jones. They run 4th and 5th. Parnelli in the game universe won the 63 500 from the back of the field, actually got into an accident, and then worked his way back up from that. So pretty fantastic drive from Parnelli, and it looks like he's putting together yet another one. But again, it's the rear engine cars that are really dominating this race so far, led by me in the Halibrand Offenhauser. The next two cars in line are Clark in a Lotus Ford and Roger Ward in a Watson Offenhauser. Dan Gurney in the third of the Lotuses is up to 6th, and Bobby Marshman in the second Lotus Ford that actually started third on the grid is way back there in 8th now. So a lot of shuffling in the field early on in this race as everybody's kind of settling into their race pace. Again, like I said, we're already 10% through the race. It's funny how much faster these races are going to go now because of the fact that the cars are going to get faster and faster and faster. As I'm really just running to a pace. I'm not really going all that hard. Don't really need to. I'm 6 seconds ahead of Clark. And boy, oh boy, do I wish I'd had this car at Trenton. I decided to go with a 1963 Novi Curtis chassis, Novi engine, I should say. And that was a mistake, because that car, just not competitive. It wasn't even competitive when it was new in 1963. So trying to run it against a grid of 1964 cars was just asking for trouble. But here, in the Halibrand 5-speed gearbox, with an Offenhauser engine, the most powerful engine you can get for the rear engine cars, some 23 horsepower more than the Ford, interestingly enough. And you can see that, the effect of that horsepower, absolutely allowing me to pull away so far. Of course, the chassis is working really good too, very well balanced. And I'm actually kind of surprised I'm able to pull away from Jim Clark quite this much early in the race. Of course, in real life, AJ Foyt managed to take the win, the final win for a front-engine car at Indianapolis. And right now he runs in 4th, 11 seconds behind the race, but he's closing in on Clark and Roger Ward. So, were something to happen to me, AJ's right in it. And Gurney and Parnelli came up there from the mid-pack. Bobby Unser falling back as well. And Johnny Rutherford, who was the other car, including me, that DNF'd at Trenton, he's up into the mid-pack. Don't know if I'll end up catching lap traffic as Roger Ward has moved into 2nd place past Jim Clark. Not sure when that happened, but I just looked on the board there and it showed that the car directly behind me is now Roger Ward. The gap is about 10 seconds. And Jimmy Clark falls by the wayside, at least early on. Roger Ward, I believe, finished 2nd in real life. Probably should have won, but there was actually a bit of controversy, or at least confusion in his team. Something about a fuel mixture button on his steering wheel was mislabeled, and it was actually when Roger Ward thought he was putting the car into full lean to keep the car from running out of fuel early on in the race. He had it on full rich, so he had to make one extra pit stop, and that's what cost him the race to AJ Foyt. The reason I know all this information about the 64 race is because of a book called Black Noon, which I highly suggest if you're an Indy 500 fan, or if you're just a racing fan in general. It's a fantastic read about just the state of auto racing in 1964, and specifically about the Indianapolis 500 of this year, and the terrible tragedy that took place on this day. But at the moment, things aren't all that tragic. 1/5 of the way already, about to complete the race, and a 12-second lead on Roger Ward. About a quarter of a tank of gas, so I'm probably going to have to pit with about 10 laps to go, I would assume. If we think about that, probably about lap 40, I'll be just about out of fuel. Now that's the question. Can I put enough distance between myself and the Roadsters to be able to make it to the end? Because I'm pretty sure the Roadsters get better fuel economy than the rear engine cars, as Jim Clark goes into 2nd place. So Clark and Ward are having an absolutely fantastic barn burner for second place. But it's not meaning a whole lot because I'm absolutely going all Penske Mercedes on the field right now and just blitzing them with this Halibrand Offenhauser. Not the combination I thought would be very good. It's got a very gaudy paint scheme, as you can see. Marathon sponsorship on the nose. That's part of the reason why Eddie Sachs used gasoline over methanol. Though, to be fair, it wouldn't have done a whole lot for him, I suspect, because of the head-on impact. That's another kind of misnomer about the whole 64 crash, is that Eddie Sachs was pretty much going to be dead one way or the other. Dave McDonald, on the other hand, was killed because of his burns. Actually died in the hospital later, but Sachs was killed on impact, and it was definitely the impact, not necessarily the fuel explosion that got him. Just an all-around pretty sad day for racing, particularly at the Indianapolis 500, probably the darkest day in Indy 500 history, at least in the last 60 years. I almost said 50 years, but 64 is getting up there. And it looked like Dan Gurney had fallen way back in the field. He'd been up in the top 6. It looked like he was back on page 2 now, like 10th or 12th in the running order. So not sure why Gurney fell back so significantly. And I'm going to look back at the running order here in a second to see where Sachs and McDonald are in the field. It'd be interesting to track their progress throughout the race. See, maybe kind of dream where they might have ended up had they been able to complete the race. So Don Branson is up into 5th. I believe Branson is also running a rear-engine car. And Dan Gurney's back to 7th. Johnny Rutherford and Jack Brabham having a great battle right there. I can see on the board. Not sure where Sachs is. McDonald is running 28th. And I didn't even see Eddie Sachs, so he must be either way up the field or way down it, because one way or the other I didn't see him. Parnelli Jones is the second front-engine car right now, running in 5th. So will it be a battle between AJ, Parnelli, and myself if they don't have to come into the pits? And Eddie Sachs is up into the top 10, so there you go. Sachs has absolutely been coming through the field then. No doubt about it. So almost 13.5 seconds over Jimmy Clark, now up to 14 seconds. So really pulled out the lead on the main straightaway there. This car has a lot of horsepower, but again, it also handles so well. That's just really allowed me to run away with this one so far. Interesting as well that there has been no contact as of yet. Have not heard one car out of the race, and Roger Ward goes into 2nd, just as I mentioned that. So Roger Ward passes Jim Clark and goes into P2. But yeah, no contact, no cars out of the race yet. We'll see how that all plays out. Eventually, we are going to catch lap traffic, especially with the pace I'm running. And speak of the devil, car number 95. I'm not familiar with that number, so we'll find it out as we take a look at the running order. Hopefully I'll see it. I'm not going to stop paying attention to the road because it's possible. I see some wheels down here in turn 1. You can see outside the groove there's a wheel out there, so somebody got into the outside wall in turn 1. Car number 95, we'll find out who that is momentarily. Interesting to note that it's a single car accident, and here actually the car's down here on the apron on the back straightaway, so we'll get a name as they come on by. 95 is Chuck Stevenson. So Chuck Stevenson in trouble early on, will go a lap down in the Indianapolis 500. But obviously we're only working lap 15, so there's a long way to go, and a lot more to play for still. Roger Ward is 2nd, 13.5 seconds behind me, the leader. And there's a car up there. I saw a car going through turn 1, so catching the back of the field now. Lap traffic is going to be a big key. I'm actually surprised that lap traffic is going to be that big of a deal here. But again, I guess with the pace I'm running, you know, it's going to be a thing. There you hear Stevenson finally gets into the pits. He's already 2 laps behind the race. He'll be at least probably 3 by the time I come back around, depending on how long his pit service is. Don Branson up into 4th. So it's rear-engine cars 1 through 4. Branson is the teammate to Roger Ward at the Watson rear-engine team. Watson built rear-engine cars and front-engine cars for this year's Indianapolis 500. So mechanical diversity even in chassis manufacturers. My, how times have changed. So down the main straightaway once again, looking at some lap traffic out in front. And another car coming out of the pits. This should be Stevenson in car number 95. Now they usually come out kind of the NASCAR. There you go. 95 pulls out of the pits. Stevenson. That's what got Parnelli in 63. This time I'll work traffic a little bit smarter than Parnelli. Drive around Stevenson. And hopefully won't see him again. The Roadsters are pretty fast in the straight line, so I got to be careful that he doesn't get a big old DW12 draft on me and try to stick it down the inside, but he doesn't. Still accelerating, of course, out of the pit, so not up to full racing speed yet. This should be Norm Hall that I'm about to lap. And lap traffic, always a big key at the Indianapolis 500. You can do as many wave around rules as you like, but it doesn't stop people from being slow. And that is what we're going to see right here. Just looking at the running order now, Eddie Sachs has moved up to 9th position, so Sachs up another position in the second Halibrand chassis in the field. So pretty interesting that I'm not the only one having a good day in this car. And we're certainly going to sell a lot of Halibrands if Sachs and I manage to come home 1-2, especially if Sachs drives from 22nd up to the front. Pretty fantastic day for him. And we're coming up on traffic. Watson Roadster up here. At least I assume it's a Watson. A little bit of a slide going on. Tires are wearing a bit. Almost at half tanks. Probably going to be right at half tank at lap 20. So just as I predicted, going to be about lap 40 where I'm going to have to come into the pits. Still maintaining a 14-second lead over Roger Ward. But again, traffic is going to affect this a little bit. He's going a big run on Norm Hall. Is he going to be nice to me? Woo, that's a little bit late. I tried to stick it up to the inside. Thankfully, thought better of it. Don't hit him, don't hit him, don't hit him. Man, that was close. Norm Hall is not making it easy for me to lap him. Seeing as there's no full course yellows, Norm, you're not going to get your lap back if there's a yellow. So racing me that hard is just going to end in tears for both of us. Thankfully, he finally let me by on the back straightaway. And by let me by, I mean I passed him using the speed of this Halibrand chassis. And driving out of turn 4. So if that's how traffic's going to be, that's going to be pretty difficult to maintain this lead. You just never know. This is what makes the Indy 500 such a tough race to win, even in this game, because you just don't know. You can have the longest lead ever. And I'm assuming I'm going to have to make a pit stop, and some of the Roadsters aren't. So the more time I lose in traffic that they're not losing, hey, guess what? That's potentially, you know, I lose a second in traffic, and you know, the Roadsters don't have to pit. That could decide the race. It's a game of inches, a game of seconds. And we simply won't know the result until we get to the end of the race. So no more lap traffic, at least for now. Probably because I got held up so badly by Norm Hall there. But again, Roger Ward did close the gap a little bit. It's down to, well, 13 seconds on the straightaways. About 11 in the corners. But eventually I'm going to be up in a pretty heavy lap traffic, especially considering I made up a full lap on the back of the field in the first 20 laps of the race. You could assume the next 20 laps I'll be, you know, assuming on how I get through the traffic, probably halfway up through the field. So that's going to make things very interesting. Very interesting. And I do see a lot of traffic. A lot of traffic going through turn number 3. 14 seconds I'm pulling it out as the gap to Roger Ward as I drive it down into turn 3. Again, the other thing is going to be tire wear. That's going to be a big key. Drive out of turn 4. Down the main straightaway once again. Top speed on this car is about a 185. That's what I've seen on the speedometer there. Don't know what the drafting potential is. 158. That actually still probably would have gotten the pole. I believe Clark was right around 157, 158 for his speed in qualifying. And in 3 laps, it's going to be the midway point in the race. The midway point in the 1964 Indianapolis 500. And right as I'm going to get to the midway point, I'm going to be getting into heavy, heavy traffic. I can see them up there. I'm actually surprised I haven't closed them down quite as much, because I felt like I was a lot closer to them as I caught Norm Hall, but for whatever reason, that has not been the case. Again, still just maintaining the 13-second lead over Roger Ward. Bobby Unser's fallen back to 13th in the Novi, so that car is fast in qualifying, as I found out last year in the 500, but not particularly all that fast in the race. But I found a really special car here in this Halibrand. This is the kind of car you dream of, and I'm surprised that I've gotten this opportunity. I actually was starting to wonder if I'd ever really get a good shot at this thing, and this is a good shot, I will tell you that. There's still a long way to go. AJ Foyt running 5th in the Roadster, the first Roadster, again. Ooh, I'm worried about their pit strategy. I was almost lost it coming through the short chute. Need to start being careful. Tires are wearing, and through traffic, it's going to make things a little bit more dicey. Again, potentially going to lose time, and I ain't got a lot of time to lose. I've only got 13 seconds in hand. So of course, when they hit traffic, maybe they'll get slowed down quite a bit. Who knows? As we've seen in Milwaukee, in this game, when there's lap traffic in this game, a lot of times the leaders have trouble getting through it. There's trouble and crashes and problems and cars spinning and catching on fire and all sorts of things. So who knows? We're coming up to the halfway mark of the race right now, almost at half a fuel tank, so maybe I can make it to the end of the race. Do a one-stop, or not even have to do a one-stopper. It is going to be incredibly close. Might have to make a splash and dash towards the end of this thing. Who knows? This kind of feels like the end of the rest of the Indy 500s. I've been in this career mode where it's like, well, I don't know. I don't know if I can make it. I don't think I will be able to. But it looks like I'm getting good enough fuel mileage that I'm going to need to pit with 1 to go. That's what it's looking like right now. And that's annoying. So as the back of the field comes through turn 2, I'll be closing them down. And we'll get to traffic. And a whole new dynamic of this race. That's Ronnie Duman, the slowest qualifier in the field, who just managed to not get bumped on bump day. He's really not running that much better in the race, but hey, you know what? Just making the Indy 500 is a prestigious deal. I'm sure he's happy to be here, despite the fact that he's not really competitive. Again, I'm kind of struggling through the corners. Suppose I could pit now, but no, I don't think so. I don't think so. The tires are definitely wearing quicker than the fuel, which is interesting. But it's not like it's undrivable. Ward has closed the gap to 10 seconds. So he clearly hasn't caught traffic yet. I'm surprised he hasn't. Clark, Branson, Foyt. Still the next group of cars. As I head down the back straightaway, out to 12.5 seconds on the entry to turn 3. Lifting off the gas, you can kind of hear it backfiring a little bit. The engine sounds in this game aren't the best, but they get the job done. My car's definitely down on speed. There's no doubt about it. Versus what I've been working with earlier with a lot of speed. Still doing 157 mile an hour laps. That's nothing to sneeze at in 1964. No doubt about it. Definitely setting a really good pace right now. Ward is within 10 seconds, so it's go time through this traffic. I will get a slipstream down the straightaway from these fellas, including Ronnie Duman, but I gotta be careful. I don't want to go too hard here. Cause some unnecessary grief for myself and crash in traffic or something like that. Passing in the corner is probably a bad idea, at least, unless it's an absolute sure thing. Alright, so getting a run on Duman to the inside. And a clean overtake of lapped traffic right there. Lift off the throttle. Glide it into turn 1. Hope the Duman doesn't dive bomb me. I saw his shadow, but that was about all I saw of Ronnie Duman. Now coming up behind Bob Harkey, a car that passed me at Trenton relatively easily for, I think, 19th place, but this time, shoes on the other foot, Harkey. Bye. And the gap is out to 12 seconds, so I'm actually running a little bit better in traffic than I was in race conditions, or at least by myself. It's interesting because in some ways the traffic has actually kind of helped me run cleaner. But again, still got Roger Ward to worry about, only 11 seconds behind. 12 seconds now. I'm certainly not out of the woods yet. So work through turn 1. Looking at the next car on my victim list. Bud Tinglestead. Another car that I battled with at Trenton at the back of the field. Not today. The shoe is on the other foot once again. So get a really good run here, but nowhere to go with it. So I'll lift off, use a little bit of discretion in traffic. Ward has got the gap down to 9 seconds. Car pushing up almost into the wall there. Got to be careful. I didn't know arrow push was a thing in a car without wings, but I don't know. Okay, Tinglestad. Should be able to clear him going down into turn 1, which I do. Now don't run me over, don't run me over, don't run me over. Wow, we're on the outside. Wow, that Roadster's handling pretty well. Gotta say. Good job, Bud. So got the car right on the apron. Almost got the back end going. And now down the back straightaway once again, in behind Tinglestad. This should be a pass this time. I should be able to clear him relatively easily. That time, got him. Well, he's hanging tough on the inside. Boy, he is fighting for that lead lap spot real hard. I pushed up just a little bit behind McDonald. And I didn't clear him. And Tinglestad's going after McDonald. He's probably going to pass him. Gotta be careful here. This is not really what I wanted to be doing at the front of the field. Tinglestad goes around the outside again and hangs on to it. Well, this is a great battle. Not sure why he's racing me this hard, but you know, I'm gonna sock him in the mouth when we get done with this. All right, let's try this again. Down the back stretch. So I'm gonna lift off in 3 and 4. I'm just gonna try to pass them both, getting a big run out of turn 4. So I'm not gonna pass Tinglestad this time. Just lift off the gas early. It's down to 7 seconds between myself and Ward. So you can see what this monkeying around has done behind Bud Tinglestad and Dave McDonald. And it's not done good things, I can tell you that. So on the throttle, can I get a good run off of turn number 4 to pass possibly both of these guys? I just don't have the cornering speed anymore. And that's hurting my entry, or my exit. Nope. as Tingelstad works way to the outside, trying desperately to get around Dave McDonald. The gap is down to 6 seconds. But I don't want to take a big risk in traffic. That's the last thing I want to do. Here we go. Here we go. Tingelstad tries to go to the inside of McDonald. He's blocked because I managed to power around both of them down the back straightaway. And around the lap cars finally, though I'm running way too wide. And McDonald looking to the inside, can't get the job done. And I finally lapped those cars. Well, that was some good entertainment. As you can see, the power of my car just pulling away from Dave McDonald's Sears Allstate Special. That's a Thompson chassis, Offenhauser engine. Or no, excuse me, I believe that has a Ford engine. It either has a Ford or no, it has a Ford, I believe. I can't remember exactly, but I think it has a Ford. Someone will correct me in the comments, I'm sure of it, but you know. Anyway, the 6-second gap between myself and Roger Ward, that is not a pit delta. To be able to pit and not have to worry about being passed again. And it's actually both of the Watson cars with Don Branson in tow behind Ward. The Lotuses have fallen kind of out of contention, despite the fact that 2 of the 3 started on the front row. Down next to the white line, getting a good drive off of the corner. Thankfully this time, this lap car up here is not a double show, so you would think I'd be able to pass him relatively easily without having to worry about not running over another car ahead of me. That was part of the problem with McDonald, but again, Ward really closing down the gap. It's 5 seconds now. Five seconds between myself and Roger Ward. That is a bit too close for comfort as far as I'm concerned, because I'm pretty sure that's him behind the pack right there. But thankfully, he will have to come through the same amount of cars that I did. That's probably my saving grace right now. At least I hope, fingers crossed. So diving into turn 4, and right along the white line, driving off the corner. Not sure who this is, but we're about to find out. The name hasn't quite come up yet. Johnny White. I can tell you nothing about Johnny White. I have no idea anything about Johnny White. All I know is he's in front of me and I need to pass him quickly because Roger Ward is closing the gap. Down to 4.5 seconds. And Johnny White fairly slow off of turn 2. Should be an easy overtake here. And there you go, another car a lap down, Johnny White. And now there's another gaggle of cars up in front, but at least for a couple laps I'm going to have some clean air. Be able to do with what I will, but then there's a 3-car gaggle. That's going to be tough. Going to be tough to manage that. Coming down to about a quarter tank of fuel with about 15 to go. So who knows how this is going to go. Ward only 4 seconds behind. He's really closed in a significant margin. But at least now I can kind of run my own pace once again. And again, I just got to hope and pray that Roger Ward gets held up in traffic. And I don't necessarily get held up in traffic. And then I've got to think about fuel as well. Will they have to pit? I certainly hope so. But who knows? There's a lot of things up in the air right now, and Roger Ward appears to be in heavy traffic. Those 2 cars that had such a struggle to get past, Roger Ward seems to be having the same struggles to get past them. But again, it's always tougher to be the leader coming through lap traffic than the second place car because they've got nothing to fight you on at that point. They're already a lap behind the race. It's one of the interesting dynamics of racing. So 13 laps to go. I've got exactly a quarter tank of fuel. I just don't know if I'll be able to make it to the end. Probably not. Probably need to come in for a stop. Tires and fuel. I feel like if I'm gonna come in, God almighty, I should come in 3 laps. So I can have 10 laps to go on fresh tires. Because if I come in early, or if I come in late, try to stretch it, you know, and I have to battle for the win, I won't have fresh tires. By coming in early, I'll have fresh tires to play with. And as you can see on the indicator, the tires are certainly getting quite red from excessive wear. And again, Roger Ward stalking behind me at 4 seconds. So I'll come in on lap number 40. So next time around, really at the end of 39, to start lap 40. Whoops, let's not hit the wall, David. Let's not hit the wall. That was a bit of a slide. Ward 3.8 seconds behind. I don't need a whole heck of a lot of fuel. Just enough to get to the end, plus tires. And of course, the coming into the pits thing is going to be a pretty long process. Going to lose some time doing that. I've just got to hope that the Watsons need to pit, and then I can stay away. Well, they're only 12 seconds behind, though. I'm going to fall probably to 10th. At least. Probably 13th or 14th. Maybe it would have been smarter when I had the 13-second lead to come into the pits then, but, you know, here we go. Pit stop. We'll see if this strategy works. Pit entry way down here. And into the pits I come. No speed limit. Don't need to worry about it. Gonna go half tank of fuel. Should be good to go to the end. 7 seconds will be the pit stop for the Halibrand team. Waiting. 4, 3, 2. There goes AJ. There goes a lot of the back marker, or not the back markers. I believe that was Jack Brabham in the blue car that went by there. All right, so here we go. Where am I in the field? As the car comes around, Johnny Rutherford. So I'm in 10th, exactly where I predicted I would be. All right, time to use the fresh tires. I know I've got 12 seconds of pace in this thing versus the AI on fresh tires. So 10 laps to go. The battle is on. Bobby Unser behind me, Johnny Rutherford ahead of me. A lot of Indy legends. There's 6 Indy 500 wins in the future for those two drivers. But not at the moment. At the moment, Rutherford's a rookie. Unser is in his second 500. So down the main straightaway. Crossing the line. With 10 laps to go. Trying to chase down Johnny Rutherford. Lone Star JR. The Halibrand, the dominant car, wasn't particularly the most fuel-efficient car, to say the least. Half a second between myself and Rutherford. Should be able to close this gap down relatively easily here. Right down on the line in the short chute. Wow, contact with Johnny Rutherford. And to the inside, I'm going to hold on to it. Obviously, he's on older tires. I am not. And you can see the difference. You can see the difference. Okay. So I need to pull out a little bit earlier than that. Haskins, the next car, 10 seconds ahead. That's a bit of a more ask, or a bigger ask. 10 seconds. But again, you never know. I've already put a second on Rutherford, so it tells you how much faster my car is in its current state. Again, I was able to make up an organic 13-second, well, really it was more than 13 seconds, wasn't it? It's really like 14, 15 seconds in the first 10 laps of the race. So you gotta assume we'll probably put together that magic again. We'll just have to wait and see. As Hansgen, I don't know how to pronounce that, is the gap is falling significantly down to 8 seconds. And that'll be for the first championship points, ironically enough. But we'll see. Lap 43, and still nobody coming into the pits. So that makes me a bit concerned, to say the least. Roger Ward leading from Don Branson and Jim Clark. Those are the top three. Again, Hansgen is the final, or the first guy I can pass to get points. I don't even have points yet, finishing 9th, which is not good for the championship. Ran 162.5 mile an hour lap. That was probably when I was running behind Rutherford, I would guess. I definitely was not pushing this car this much early in the race, but now's the time to push it because it's now the time to go. And still no pit stops yet. Still no pit stops. Chuck Stevenson. Driver who struggled earlier in the race. Contact. Into the wall goes Chuck Stevenson. Thankfully he didn't come back across the track and hit me. That was a big my bad on my part for sure. I lost time to Hansgen. It's exactly what I didn't want to do. Thankfully, everybody managed to make it out of there okay. 7.2 seconds. Now down to 6.5 seconds for myself and Hansgen. I just don't think I would have made it on fuel to make it to the end, but now nobody else is pitting. So that kind of blows. We'll see coming to the end of the race, but I'm not feeling confident. I can tell you that. It's a big old group of cars up here, though. Again, I have the pace to do it, but do I have the laps remaining in the race to do it? That's the question. I just don't think I do. With coming to complete lap number 46, or starting lap 46, completing 45, it's going to be a tough ask. Down to 6 seconds between myself and Hansgen. Can at least get some points. Come on. Dang, I don't know what it's going to take to win an Indy 500. This is like the biggest challenge in this game. I guess it should be. But good grief. All right. Down to 5 seconds. Starting to catch the traffic up here. This, I believe, is a lap car. I think it's Harkey, if I'm not mistaken. Now at 4 laps to go. Still nobody making any kind of dives for the pit lane yet. And really trying to use up the tires now. No reason to save anything. Yes, this is Bob Harkey. 4 seconds to Hansgen. Easily will clear Harkey. No problemo. 3.5 seconds to Haskin. No brakes at all, just using the throttle to steer the car through the corner. Right down on the white line. Still no pit stops. What does a guy have to do to get the AI to come into the pits? 3 laps to go. Roger Ward leading. Ronnie Duman. So not even 52 is in the pits. Who is 52? Is that one of the Lotuses? That might be Bobby Marshman. I'm not sure, but I think that may be Bobby Marshman. If that is indeed, that's a rear-engine car that needs to come into the pits. This might still be my day. We'll see. No reason to not push it now, though. Gotta keep going. Gotta keep going. This is Tinglestead. And McDonald. And 52 has been in the wall, so bad day gets worse for car number 52. Still not into championship points yet. Gotta pass Haskin. That was a Freudian slip. Oh, there's a car in the wall up here. Is he turning down in front of me? Yeah, he is, but thankfully I caught it. Jack Brabham. Jack Brabham. Was that for position? Jimmy Clark in trouble. That was Jimmy Clark in trouble. And the leader's in. Roger Ward into the pits. He could not make it. 84's in the pits. All sorts of pit stops happening now. 2 laps to go in the Indianapolis 500, and things get very dramatic very quickly. Haskin up in front.
It's the final lap.
White flag is out at Indianapolis. I'm in 6th position. I can get a top 5 here at least. On Walt Haskin. Are they going to run out? What is going to happen here? What an exciting finish to this one. Probably bad strategy on my part, but I'm chasing down Haskin. Can I get a top 5? This would be a fantastic finish if I can get it. Absolutely using every bit of this car I can. On the throttle car, just stepping out just a little bit. Down through the final corner, absolutely smoking the tires, just going for it. Can I get the run? I don't think I'm going to be able to. Man, who won? Who won the Indianapolis 500? What a fantastic and crazy finish this one was. Holy smokes. What a race. Well, I didn't get the win, but that was pretty spectacular there. And it was AJ. Of course it was AJ. That was exactly what I thought would happen. And AJ actually remains historically accurate. Takes the victory from Dan Gurney and Eddie Sachs, outdoing me in the Halibrand, coming from 22nd on the grid to 3rd. What a fantastic drive from Eddie Sachs. Parnelli Jones finished 4th, and Walt Haskin gets 5th position. 4 championship points for him. I managed to take home 6th. Johnny Rutherford and Roger Ward, who dominated the last part of the race, was unable to pull it off, unable to make that fuel work. And Don Branson, Bobby Unser is your top 10. Down through the rest of the field, you can take a look at where your favorite driver is. Jimmy Clark, after a dominant race at Trenton, had trouble, crashed, or at least got involved in somebody else's crash, and finished 20th. Shame for Jimmy Clark. Down through the rest of the field, Jack Brabham was involved in an accident, and he finished 31st. Chuck Stevenson, final car, finishing the race. All cars finished the race. Nobody was out of the race, but certainly an interesting Indianapolis 500 with AJ Foyt winning from Dan Gurney, Eddie Sachs, again on the podium. And hey, I'll take 6th place. Not the most amazing finish in the world for me, but we're getting closer to winning the Indianapolis 500. Certainly the Halibrand chassis was the one to have. If I'd pitted earlier when I had a big lead, I think I might have probably won it because I would have been ahead of at least Hasgen and Jones and Sachs and maybe possibly Gurney, and then it would have just been battling with Foyt to get that position. So that's probably how I could have won it. You know, we'll get him next year. We got some points, and that's what matters going into a lot of races here that I can win. Certainly with a dominant car like the Halibrand, Milwaukee, Langhorne, this championship still very much up for grabs. So thank you guys so much for watching. This has been David Land on YouTube. If you enjoyed the 1964 Indianapolis 500, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more Indy 500 month content. We'll see you in the next video.